us on our Made Local series to celebrate the Pittsburgh launch of the No Club, Putting a Stop to Women's Dead-End Work by Linda Babcock, Brenda Peyser, Lise Vesterlund, and Laurie Weingart. Hello, I'm Karina Chavez, a board member of Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures. And on behalf of Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures and our co-presenter of Made Local, the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, welcome. Thank you to tonight's sponsors, Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh. I don't know about all of you, but I really needed to be here tonight. And to White Whale Bookstore, who is here with signed copies of the No Club. There will be a book signing after the program with the signing line starting right at the corner of the stage. The No Club is made up of 4 amazingly accomplished professionals in our community, and it is my pleasure to introduce them. Linda Babcock is a professor of economics at Carnegie Mellon University. A behavioral economist, she's the author of Women Don't Ask and Ask for It. Her media appearances include Good Morning America, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and more. Brenda Peyser has held leadership roles in the corporate and academic worlds. A former professor of communications at Carnegie Mellon, she also served as the Associate Dean of the School of Public Policy and Management and the founding executive director of Carnegie Mellon Australia. Lise Vesterlund is a professor of economics at the University of Pittsburgh and director of the Pittsburgh Experimental Economics Laboratory. Her research has been covered by NPR, the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, The Economist, The Atlantic, The Guardian, Chicago Tribune, and more. And Laurie Weingart, a management professor at Carnegie Mellon University. She has served as CMU's interim provost and chief academic officer and as a senior associate dean and director of the Accelerate Leadership Center. Her research has been covered by the New York Times and Business Insider. Please give a warm welcome to the No Club.
Good evening, and thank you for being here with us. I'm Brenda Peyser, your first speaker of the evening. 12 years ago, the 4 of us met a few blocks away at the Union Grill. We sat at a table with 2 bottles of wine and a whole lot of anxiety. We were drowning in our jobs, and we were up to our eyeballs in tasks that we could not cross off our to-do lists. We went around the table listing all the things that we were doing, and we realized somehow we had agreed to all of them. We were more than a bit perplexed. You heard our bios in the introduction, so you can see that among us there was no lack of education or experience. By most people's definition, we were kind of a successful group of women. So you'd think that with all of that behind us, we'd be able to manage our time. Apparently not. We realized then that we had a lot of work to do if we wanted to regain control of our lives. So we polished off the wine, and we agreed to meet every month. When I got home that night, I told my husband about our meeting, and he laughed. "Perfect group for you," he said. "Do you realize that anytime anyone asks you anything, you say, 'Happy to,' before they even put the question mark at the end of the sentence?" I didn't, but I started paying attention, and my husband was right. I said yes immediately and often. In fact, we each realized that we were too readily agreeing to things that we didn't want to do, so we vowed to say no to every request that came our way. And the No Club was born. Each month, we came prepared to discuss our progress. Sometimes we had good news. We had found a way to decline a request. But more often, we confessed to saying yes yet again to something else that we didn't want to do. As we described these requests, we noticed that they weren't really key elements of our jobs. They were tasks that you're all probably quite familiar with. And so we're going to take a quick poll. Please raise your hand if you have done any of these tasks. I'm going to start with what I think is a pretty popular one. Have you ever served on a committee? Oh, good, like 100%. Have you ever helped a new employee that doesn't work directly with you settle into their job? 75. Have you ever been voluntold to arrange a birthday, work anniversary, retirement party for a coworker? Welcome to the No Club. Like you, we were asked to handle a multitude of tasks that took time away from our real jobs. We called them crappy tasks. Actually, we called them something else that I can't repeat out loud here, but later we gave them a better name, non-promotable tasks. Because although they benefit the organization, our employer, they came without reward to the person who did them. These tasks matter to organizations, and they need to be done. Non-promotable tasks, or NPTs for short, make workplaces run smoothly. They contribute to the organization's ultimate success, and they keep morale high. But even though they matter to the organization, they don't bring praise, a raise, or a promotion to the person who does them. They are tasks that are found in every single job, at every single rank, and in every single organization. I was very lucky to have several careers, from professional actress to management consultant to higher education leadership and professor. And in every single one of those jobs, I had non-promotable tasks, except maybe actress, which is a non-promotable career. At the time, I didn't know which of these tasks mattered to my advancement. And as it turns out, it's really important to know that. Now, we can help you with that because we have identified 3 distinguishing features to NPTs. Number 1, they are not directly tied to the organization's mission or business objectives. When I was in consulting, one of my tasks was to provide training and development sessions for other consultants. What I didn't realize is that leading these sessions wasn't meaningful to promotion. The thing that really mattered was bringing in new clients and logging billable hours. Teaching other consultants how to be better at their job was very beneficial to the firm, but not to my advancement. Number 2, they are invisible. You've probably had tasks like these. For me, it was writing and editing, reports, presentations, articles, brochures. Lots of times I helped other people fine-tune their work, and I was really happy to be of service, but no one knew I did it. A task done behind the scenes won't bring any benefit to you. Number 3, many people can do them, not just you. Serve on the website committee, take notes at a meeting. These tasks don't require the specialized skills you were hired for. I can't tell you the number of meetings I've attended where someone asked me, or another woman, "Hey, can you take notes and circulate them after the meeting?" I am here to tell you that pretty much anyone with a pen and a pulse can take meeting notes. So with these characteristics in mind, not tied directly to the mission, invisible, and can be done by many people, think about the tasks you have. You might be having a moment, maybe an uncomfortable one, of awareness. We sure did. Though honestly, it took us years, not minutes, to recognize the NPTs that we had. And what we learned next was even more difficult to consider, and that is the toll that this work was taking on our lives. Linda will tell you a little bit about more about that.
So in our club meetings, we spent a lot of time talking about the NPTs that we were doing. But it actually took us a while to figure out that they were actually having negative consequences for us in our careers and in our personal lives. So if you have NPTs that keep piling up on your plate, and you need to find time in your schedule to do them, what can you do? There are really two options. One is that you can cut back on your promotable work. And this is what I did. And I hadn't really realized it until I went over to the office next to me. My colleague George sits across the hall from me, and I went over to chat with him one day. And what I'd noticed is that during the day, I had been whirling around from one meeting to the next, and that George had been hunkered down in his office all day. And I asked to see his schedule for the day, and it was a total revelation. Because his day was research meetings with PhD students, research meetings with collaborators, hunkering down and working on his computer doing research. And my day was going from meeting to meeting to meeting. Well, what was on my calendar? I had a university governance meeting. I helped a PhD student who was having trouble with his advisor, and I was going to give him some advice about how to handle it. I had a curriculum review committee meeting. I was meeting with a junior faculty member in another department. She was having a conflict with her department head, and she wanted my help with that. And I'd given a negotiation workshop to a group of sorority women on campus. Now, you might think, each one of those is just a little thing. What's the big deal? But a ton of feathers still weighs a ton, right? They added up. And it became clear to me right then that I was doing too many NPTs and not enough PTs, what we call promotable work. And we actually have a word for this now, a term. We call it work-work imbalance. And it's kind of like work-life imbalance, which is, the division between your work and your personal life. But work-work balance is the division between the promotable and the non-promotable work that you do. And if that's out of balance, for example, you might be doing too many NPTs and not enough PTs. If that's out of balance, that can be problematic for you. And let me tell you how it was problematic for me. First, because I was spending so much time on my NPTs, I cut back on my research. Now, I didn't ever make the conscious decision to cut back on it, but slowly over time, all those NPTs just nudged out those PTs. And so I was left with a lot less time to focus on my research. And for those of you academics in the audience, you know that research is the prime promotable task. And it was the task I was hired to do, and I wasn't doing it because I didn't have time. And as a result, my productivity stalled, and I didn't have enough time to start new projects. Number 2, some of the NPTs that I was doing, some of those were emotionally exhausting. I spent a lot of time helping people with their conflicts with people at work. And sometimes this got very emotional, and it just took a toll on me after a while, and I had trouble shaking it off when I went home. Third, because of the drop in my productivity, I started having a crisis of confidence, if you will. That is, I started wondering, do I still have what it takes to succeed in academia? And it really started to affect the way I saw myself. If I wasn't doing a lot of research, was I really still a scholar? Fourth, all of those things, as you might imagine, left me pretty stressed out. And what happened is I started to become dissatisfied with the job that I had really once loved, and I thought a lot about quitting. Okay, that option doesn't sound so good. Option about cutting back on your promotable work, no. All right, what's the other option? Well, one is keep the amount of promotable work that you do, and if you have all these MPTs, just work more hours. And that's what Lisa did. And let's see how that worked out for her. Well, Lisa is a really conscious organizational citizen. She served on departmental committees, university committees. She mentored graduate students at Pitt and around the world. She served on journal editorial boards. And she was really active in faculty hiring. And I'm getting really tired just thinking about Lisa's to-do list. And Lisa's really passionate about her research.
is that it really helps us understand what we can do to improve it. Importantly, this isn't something that women can fix. While we work very hard at saying no, the challenge is that when we all expect women to say yes, it is quite dangerous for them to say no, because they could very well face backlash as a response. So this isn't, we have a tendency to sort of look at all these differences we see between men and women and decide that, oh, we need to fix the women and make them like the men. This is not a fix the women problem. We don't need more people to say no, we need more people to say yes. So rather, this is a fix the organization problem. Now, fixing organizations is hard, but what's exciting about this work is that it is in the interest of the organization because we have shown that this is driven by expectations. If it is driven by expectations, it means that we are likely to misallocate resources within our organizations. We shouldn't give assignments to employees because they're likely to say yes. We should give them assignments because they're best at it. So once the organizations understand, and certainly the organization we work with where there was a 200-hour difference, immediately changed their practices. So it is in the interest of the organization to do that. This both because there's evidence that they're misusing their very valuable resources, but also because if you let this work go unnoticed, you're likely to develop this very large misalignment between the corporate interest and the employee interest. You're going to end up seeing employees shirk on the work. You're going to end up seeing employees sort of portray a very interesting type of strategic incompetence where employees who somehow are very efficient at doing lots of things suddenly can't write a report at the end of a meeting. It's not in the interest of the organization. So this is a problem that is in the interest of our organizations, and it is a problem that organizations are the only ones who can solve. Now, in sort of thinking about organizations coming in, you can imagine how changing how we distribute work between men and women is not just going to give women better opportunities to do more exciting work, but it is also going to spill over to lots of other things. It's going to spill over to the wages that you get. If you do non-promotable work, you're going to get lower wages. It's going to, of course, spill over to whether or not you get promoted, but it is also going to spill over to the satisfaction that you have at work. So all these factors that we've been concerned about and have worked to move and change for years and really haven't made a dent in, what our work suggests is that maybe the reason why we've struggled so much on gender equity is because we've failed to recognize that the structure that sustains these differences comes down to how we're spending every single day at work. Now, fortunately, what Laurie's going to talk about are the many very easy and inexpensive solutions that organizations can implement to make sure that both employees and organizations reach their potential. So Laurie's up next.
From our own experience, it was clear that teaching women to say no would not be enough to solve the problem. We knew, and our research showed, that if we turned down an NPT, it would just be passed on to another woman. So we set out to create awareness of the NPT problem for women and for their organizations. Our message? It isn't that women are better at them, or that we like doing them more, or even that we need to get better at saying no. It's that we all expect women to do the work, so we ask them over and over again. Okay, so not only, of course, does this stall women's careers, overburdening women with NPTs prevents women and their organizations from reaching their potential. So I want to put an exclamation point on that. Okay. So we all knew we needed a multifaceted approach that would help women manage their NPT load and provide managers and organizations tools that they need to balance the allocation of NPTs among their employees. So we identified strategies that they each could use that would address the problem from their unique vantage points. Every single employee can see change in their company through the example that they set and the knowledge that they share. In this way, individuals are uniquely positioned to open others' eyes to the concept of non-promotable tasks, who is actually doing them, and how our shared expectations result in women taking it on. We wanted everyone to recognize non-promotable tasks, not only other women, but also coworkers from underrepresented groups who were also being overburdened, our male colleagues who cared about the problem, and our bosses. So we pointed out tasks that were non-promotable whenever the opportunity arose. I think our coworkers got a little tired of hearing about it, but once people start seeing NPTs and who was doing it, they couldn't unsee it. Lisa did this by introducing the concept of NPTs to her department and to Pitt more broadly. She got people comfortable with the term, introducing it in casual conversation and during committee meetings, pointing out which tasks were non-promotable whenever work was being doled out, and suggesting very different ways of allocating it, but simple changes. Case in point. Instead of asking for volunteers to write up a post-meeting report, she suggested that names be drawn out of a hat, literally. We have a photo to prove it. The solution was so obviously fair that it stuck, and it's how the work is distributed today. All right. Individuals can plant seeds for change, but managers and team leaders can influence how the work is distributed and who does what. So managers are perfectly positioned to rebalance NPT workloads by reallocating existing NPTs and moving them around, and also ensuring that the new ones are distributed equitably. So frontline managers play a pivotal role in fixing the problem. At one point in time, each of us have served in leadership roles in our department or our college or university, and that gave us insight into what managers can do from their positions of responsibility. We identified many high-impact, low-cost solutions for managers to use. So here are a few examples. I'll talk about 4 that you can use. So first, instead of asking for volunteers, which more often than not are women, rotate the assignment of new NPTs among everyone. I started speaking up whenever an NPT was up for grabs to ensure that the few women that were in the room weren't the ones taking it on once again. Second, increase the pools of those who do NPTs by training more people to be familiar with the task so that they're able to step up and step in, rather than go back to Megan once again because she already knows how to do the job. Have Brian help her out this time so that he can take it over next time. Third, monitor your direct reports' NPT workloads. It's impossible to fix the problem if you don't have a sense of what everyone is doing. This is what I did when I started as a senior associate dean in the business school several years ago. I had a feeling from personal experience that the women faculty were doing much more committee work than their male colleagues. But of course, a feeling alone wasn't enough. So we took a look at the data. And perhaps not surprisingly, I found that over 25% of the female faculty were serving on 3 or more standing committees just in the business school. But only 12% of the male faculty were doing the same. And just the opposite was happening in terms of those who had no committee assignments. 25% of the male faculty had no assignments. I was shocked. But only 9% of the women did. So when it came time to make next year's committee assignments, the other senior associate dean, Mike, and I, we sat down, we really want to ensure that women were no longer more heavily burdened with these NPT tasks. So we just shifted the assignments around. A simple solution that stuck. And finally, managers can empower their direct reports by providing them with the information that they need to assess the promotability of work on their own. And managers can run interference when their subordinate gets requests that they can't say no to, but their managers can. So my dean did this for me when I was asked to serve on a university task force, but I was already serving on another labor-intensive university committee. So he sent an email to the provost, which was his boss, that read, and I paraphrase it, Laurie would be willing and actually prefers to serve on the culture task force. This may be familiar to some people in this room. If you can find a replacement for her on the other Middle States Committee. The culture task force is much more interesting to her and would leverage her research interests and expertise. The ball is in your court. I couldn't believe he wrote that to the provost. All right. It was a very direct request, and one that I would have felt uncomfortable making on my own. What if the provost thought that, I was shirking my responsibility to the university, that I wasn't being a team player? But the provost responded positively. He made the switch, sent that email to Amy Burkert saying, because I found the email, to switch it around. And he also noted that he wasn't surprised that I was being tapped to serve on many university committees. The fact that he wasn't surprised about it worried me on multiple levels, but that was ancient history. Okay, importantly, the outcome was a win for me because my MPT load was better aligned with my interests and my expertise. And it was a win for the university because they were better leveraging my skill sets. Okay. So whereas individuals can get people thinking about the problem, and managers can adjust how work is allocated, organizations are uniquely positioned to make broad-scale changes that have a lasting impact. Organizations can fix the systems that reinforce the overburdening of women with MPTs. And here are just 3 ways that they can do that. So first, organizations can clarify their expectations regarding MPT workloads, and even set minimum and maximum standards for people to follow. Harvard's Kennedy School of Government took this approach when, after reading our research, their leadership developed a point system and required faculty to complete and conduct a minimum amount of non-promotable work. They had to earn points. And they tracked these points to ensure that everybody was fulfilling their research, teaching, and service obligations. Second, organizational leaders and HR managers can redesign work to ensure that the tasks are assigned to the right role, shifting tasks around so that an NPT for one person becomes a promotable task for another. I had learned how to plan logistics for a conference and had done it several times. But it was a much better task for a staff member to perform. Folding conference logistics into their job transformed what was an NPT for me into a promotable task for them. And third, we invite all organizational leaders to take a close look at those NPTs that are critical to the organization's mission, but have been treated as non-promotable, and ask themselves, are we walking our talk? Perhaps we should be rewarding this work by making it promotable. For example, think about efforts that improve the diversity, equity, and inclusion of the organization. They improve the culture and how people feel about the place that they work. Or think about activities that develop leadership capabilities in the workforce. These are often considered, and they are considered, mission-critical tasks for the organizations, but they're rarely rewarded by pay and promotion unless they're part of somebody's job. Together, we can make the changes necessary to free women from being overburdened with dead-end work. We welcome you to join us.
We began our talk tonight with the No Club, and so it seems fitting to end with the No Club. There was a 5th member of our club, MJ Tachi, who was with us from that very first night at the Union Grill until 2014, when she passed away from ovarian cancer. MJ was our inspiration for writing this book, and as I tell you about her, I think you'll see why. A lawyer by training, MJ had been told by someone that litigation probably wasn't a really good path for women. She proved that person wrong in no time at all, and later was named one of California's top lawyers. She and her family moved to Pittsburgh, and she founded a firm to train new lawyers, especially women. After that, she was the founding executive director of Carnegie Mellon's Leadership Academy for Women. Her career was focused squarely on providing opportunity to women in the workplace, and the No Club was just one of those many efforts she undertook. If you knew her, you knew that MJ was her own life force. She was whip smart, fierce, tenacious, hilarious, and loving. She was the one that we all looked to for the truth. When you had screwed up at a club meeting, you looked at MJ and you just knew. One of her eyebrows would go up, she would tip her head to the side, and if you were the one in her crosshairs, you got the best advice you could ever hope for. We wrote this book as a tribute to MJ, and she would be so proud that we carried forward her passion for helping women. After we lost her, we toasted her at every single club meeting. And tonight especially, she would be so happy to celebrate with us. So please join us to MJ. We're going to go into a Q&A session now. And we have a couple of prepared questions that we've already received. So we're going to start with those. And Lisa is going to go first.
Hi, so the question is, what makes you hopeful that we can create more equitable, empowering workplaces? On a day like today, it is certainly very difficult to be hopeful. We had hoped that this would be a great celebration. The leaked documents that came out of the Supreme Court certainly makes it very challenging to be hopeful that women and today and our daughters and their daughters will feel empowered and will feel equal treatment in the labor force because they will have so many fewer opportunities in that place. Indeed, many of the people who are meant to be here are downtown talking in the Women's March because they're so concerned about the consequences that an overruling of Roe versus Wade will have for women for many generations to come. So it is very challenging to feel hopeful, but we have to be hopeful. And I do think that our work points to ways in which we effectively and inexpensively can equalize the opportunities for women in the workforce. It is in the interest of organizations. We need to talk to them. We need to make everyone aware that non-promotable work is out there. Women are doing the vast majority of it, and it is hurting their opportunities. So I am hopeful, we are hopeful, that when it comes to equalizing the opportunities in the workforce in terms of the assignments that we're given, that we will get to a point where women will see a better future than what they have in the past. Now, the other much more challenging factors, hopefully, if we all remain hopeful, things can get back to where they were when we changed the world 50 years ago.
The question I have here, I'll read it. My friend talks about trying to say no with a yes when she finds she has to say no. Is that a strategy you use, and how does it work? It is a wonderful strategy. It's one Linda alluded to when she spoke. The idea that successful no's both protect yourself while helping the requester. A wonderful strategy is to think about saying yes, no, yes. This is a strategy that was popularized by Bill Urey, a negotiation expert, and teaching negotiation, it's something, really identify with. So first you say yes to yourself. You recognize your own limitations and what the request will do to you and how it affects you. So you're saying yes to you rather than just focusing on the requester's needs. The second step is saying no. So you may say no to the request as it's been requested or as they framed it, and providing a brief explanation why. Again, giving details about your workload, they don't care. The other person doesn't care. But they do care to understand that there is a justification for it. But then the third point is to say yes again. To say yes to saying, I hear you, I know you need help, you're asking me for something, let's try together to find a more creative way to solve your problem, while at the same time doing it within the parameters that I can fulfill. So here's an example we have in the book of what this sounds like. Thank you for thinking of me, Joe. I have so much on my schedule the next 2 quarters with leading the new product launch that I won't be able to devote the time that organizing the meeting really requires. So I'm going to have to decline. But Don would be a great person to take on the task, and he can benefit from the opportunity to interact with others across the company. I'm confident he'd do a fantastic job. So here we switch the solution, or the framing of a problem, from a win-lose, you ask and I give, or I say no and you lose, to an attempt at solving the problem and making it win-win. Right? So I'm helping you advance towards a solution, and I'm not taking on the burden myself.
So here's another question that came in this afternoon. I heard you on the Confluence and was fascinated by the idea that companies, by the idea of companies valuing and paying people for work that humanizes the workplace. I think of training new staff members, organizing staff events, or serving on DEI and other committees that improve our work culture. To me, that would be a revolution. Do you see evidence of that happening? Well, I think it would have to take a revolution. That's certainly not happening now. There's recent research that came out last year. They surveyed hundreds of companies, and what they found was that 70% of companies said that, for example, DEI initiatives were really important to the functioning of the institution. So 70% said it was important, but only 24% said that they rewarded that work. So you can see the disconnect. This work is important, but it's not being rewarded. And one of the things that, that Laurie talked about was that companies can actually change the way that work is rewarded if they really want to. So I was giving a talk a number of years ago at a consulting firm, and it was fortuitous because they were in the process of redesigning their performance evaluation system. And so they listened to my work on non-promotable tasks, and they said, what's really important for us is that people help each other with their work. And as Brenda talked about earlier, that work is invisible, so it's typically non-promotable, and we want to promote that. We want really people to do that. How do we measure it? And they came up with a system that during the year, you could put a note of appreciation in someone's file, that they had helped you and that it was extremely valuable. And so at the end of the year, when performance evaluations came up, they would use that data as a metric in their performance evaluation. And so they made something that had been non-promotable, promotable. And so that isn't rocket science, right? You could change that if you really wanted to. If an organizational leader had the will and courage to do something like that, we could move forward with this tomorrow. So I guess I have reason to be hopeful that maybe we can have a revolution if a few people just started to do things like that.
Our last question is, what advice do you have for women who would like to start a no club? We have 12 years worth of advice, but I'm going to do it in about 15 seconds. So first of all, you want to find a small group of people, 4 to 6. Enough people that you've got a good diversity of opinion, but not too many where anybody can get lost. You want to set a meeting time, and you have no excuses. You have to show up. It's not like, oh, I'm stuck at work. That's the whole idea. We have exercises in our book that help people go through the process. The exercises are based on sort of the experience we had. So we spent a lot of time learning ourselves. We've made it shorter for everybody else. You want to be available to each other outside of club meetings to help and to answer questions. You want to provide support and advice, no judgment, because we don't need more of that. The other thing that we found is that it is incredibly rare to have a group of people that have your back in the way that a club will have your back, where these are people that you're going to end up being lifelong friends with. That certainly happened for us. And they're people that love you on multiple dimensions. And it's so uncommon in these days to have that kind of warmth and attention from other human beings that we really encourage you to do that. And our final piece of advice in forming a club is that in our experience, alcohol helps. We have a couple of quick thanks that we want to make before we end this evening, which has just been unbelievably fantastic for us. So first of all, a big thank you to all of you who are here with us in this room, and also to all of you who are out there online, friends and family both. Second, we want to also make a big thanks to the Pittsburgh Arts and Lecture Series for hosting this event for us and making it so special. This is just such a wonderful place to be. And finally, we want to give our thanks to our universities, Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh, for all the support they've provided to us over the years in writing this book and working on our research, and also in helping us sponsor this event. We are in all of your debt, and we are so grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight on our Made Local series, and a big thank you to Linda Babcock, Brenda Peyser, Lise Vesterlund, and Laurie Weingart. I do feel hopeful. Today's a rough day, but for the work that you're doing and the systemic changes that you're tackling and creating opportunities for women in the workforce, I want to thank you so much. Let's hear it for the No Club.